Greetings, greetings, salutations, zum Gebetstag, hello, and welcome to my views on medicine. I'll read a prepared statement. The scientific method and the current establishment, the vested interests in medicine, in for profit medicine, we'll start with one word. Does anyone have a word for the worst word in medicine? It is behavior. Behavior is used in non medical or capitalist medicine. Marxist, Freudian, Bushing, these are just words. You can replace words, substitute words, and that is called a change. One moral and religious value I hold is that since 2020, when I entered a mental hospital in Atlanta, Georgia, medical doctors across the spectrum, indeed, have failed the United States. The whole class of physicians have failed. There has been economic but also moral um, failure, treason, war, casualty, rape, incest that we need to revisit. No doctor has then been since able to theorize on a new version of mental illness or depression. Scientific methods, right? Scientific methodism, the scientific method, which we will read here. Does anyone know who invented the scientific method in its formality? It was Voltaire, Nietzsche's father. It is generally recognized to develop advances in knowledge, right? Not profit. Characterizations, right? That's one, which are observations, definitions, measurements. Measurement would be helpful. Hypothesis. Is this person going to live? Is the main hypothesis we know about doctors. Theoretical, hypothetical explanations of observations and measurements of the subject, not the audience. Predictions, inductive and deductive reasoning, such as how long will the patient's recovery take? What medicines are good? What are the chances of misdiagnosis? Misdiagnosis is by far the most common result of seeing a doctor these days. Experiments, not a bad word. And here's the thing, each element of the scientific method, instead of us, the people, should be subject to the hospital, to the other doctors. We'll continue. Scientific method, or what I call evidence based medicine, on the other hand, speaks to the scientific method. Profits, for instance, are collected and dispersed after the experience. So, one obvious thing is that when you see a doctor, you do not know the cost of the experience. So, they treat you without you knowing the profit or cost or price. The patient needs treatment now, though. So, a quarter later, when they realize the profits went down and they do reform, the patient's dead. In addiction treatment, there are no warnings to the public about the chances, percentage, or indication that the patient will turn um, unhopeful, right? Suicidal, even evil. There are reports that Christian Bale and Leonardo DiCaprio um, are, in rehabilitation in AA. They did a good job. They maybe fell off the wagon. Um, there's other reports I've read in the New York Times, the New Yorker, and even Marginal Revolution. Marginal Revolution today has fallen into Tsarist Russia, and also the Chinese Republicans, right? We are posting, we can't be literal because most of the US economy and the newspapers stole intellectual property through coding. So whoever invented it could have helped. That's over. Um, there's something called the Pentagon and the Defense Department. If they think it's a useful um, website for attacking terrorism or fighting war, they're free to post there and try to um, express freedom of speech about terrorism. Um, Not today. So we continue. Those two actors, as well as many others, attacked the sobriety movement. It's a well known fact that many Americans have drinking problems, especially the great writers like Hemingway, Ray Carver. It's in all the, you know, propaganda, right? It's in all the storytelling that the great writers drink a lot. Hemingway even says opium is a hell of a drug, right? So, um, so yeah, I mean, we don't want the enemy to take advantage of healing mechanisms where maybe doctors don't make as much money as um, emergency room visits. I recently was charged after insurance from Medical Mutual about $400 for an ambulance from CVS about 10 minutes away. I could have ordered an Uber, so the emergency room is just draining um, resources from America. So I hope to you, first responders, you know, you guys don't have to, I've heard you guys are studying these days, right? So it's not all about probable cause, right? It's about, um, you know, it's about satiation and equality. Um, so think about this, that no leading psychiatrists, clinicians, or pediatric doctors or ER doctors have commented on a new science for medicine. There are hopes. David Brooks, who is Thomas Pynchon, will take over Dr. Gilbertson's job in a fictional story I'm writing, as well as Harvey Weinstein will lead the transition from Down syndrome and autism to to oppression, pediatrics. Jay Watts will lead um, those two. David Brooks, who is Thomas Pynchon, and Harvey Weinstein, a classmate at mine. We took the musical Brain together, um, junior year at Emory, a neuroscience and behavioral biology subject. Um, and again, thoughts and actions, right? Because if doctors use what word, if they use behavior, right, then they're persecuting animals. So it is only for thoughts and actions. Doctors tomorrow will use it, and they should be fired for cause. See B.F. Skinner. It sounds like behavior. He is Joseph Goebbels' father, who studied rats into oblivion beyond science, art, for the very love of Mary. So sobriety is so difficult for the patients. I've been in AA. I have. And um, you relapse, addiction, you have to deal with the devil himself, right? And Dostoevsky. And the patients get embarrassed, which leads to bad things. We all know there's so many ads for Budweiser. America is completely based on sports. Those bad stereotypes, they exist. And they create problems. People want to drink. It's not all deep philosophy and sphere, you know? Um, so, um, so the patient falls, and that means the doctor failed. So I just want you to know, Toni Morrison, um, the banking bill is dead, right? So Dick Durbin, don't worry about it. Mitch, don't worry about it. Please focus your efforts instead on creating a consumer protection bill for payers of medical insurance. Thank you for your time.